For our reading today, I will share with you a poem I wrote just this week titled, Just Earth. Just Earth, the same old planet that's been spinning in space for billions of years, that is all that's at stake. Well, not its existence. It will spin on its axis for 5 billion years more by the sun's long game. But this particular intricate network of chemical reactions and microclimates, the ecological zones and rules of life that my people, Homo sapiens, have known for millennia. The rules of life that the mammals, the reptiles and amphibians, the birds and fish, all the invertebrates, even the lichen, algae, and single-celled amoebas in the primordial soup have known since that first fish crept onto land. That's all we're talking about. It's not as if there won't be creatures and climates, mountains and deserts, seas and divine dreams of some kind playing out. But meanwhile, will the haves keep having, while the have-nots of the globe suffer sooner and more calamitously? You know it is a rhetorical question. It is already underway. It's enough to make ethicists scale up those age-old questions. How do we share fairly in the bounties and risks of terrestrial life? Who will be hurt, first and foremost? Cui bono? Who benefits from things as they are? Some certainly don't want us asking those questions, so we have all put off facing this inconvenient truth, really facing it, taking it seriously, acting as if our lives depend upon it, as if the next 7 generations may rue the day that we looked the other way. Oh, sure, climate deniers have bought time, have taken out a loan against the future, knowing full well the bank will be bankrupt before that loan is called. They have pulled the wool over the public's eyes. But did we really want to see? The enormity of the challenge is enough to panic a sensitive soul. Besides, there are so many other causes crying out for attention. Yuppie nature lovers shouldn't hog the mic when oppressed people have more pressing issues, right? I hoped Al Gore or Vandana Shiva would find the way. Couldn't Bernie or Bill McKibben take care of this for us while we are out fighting other good fights? But every injustice compounds all others. And nature, the mother of all, is the mother of all multipliers. Change the math on climate, tip past 350 parts per million, and there's no going back to the good old Holocene. You want just the plain truth about Earth? The truth is we are already in a pot boiling over. That frog had to jump out a while ago to avoid being cooked. We did not notice the moment go by. The reality is this Anthropocene age may be named for us and our post-industrial power, our out-of-control economic engine, our dog-eat-dog world in which the dog is eating his own tail. But even if we accept what time it is, the late great era of human hubris, we don't know the way back to our idyllic Eden. We can only work our way forward to some new world order waiting to be born. If we are to create a just Earth, we must give as much value to the vanishing species as we do to our own. We must shake off the trance of Homo economicus and remember we are children of the earth first and always. We must rewrite the rules so that all the people count equally, especially those who did not make this mess. We must minimize the damage and foster resilience for the future speeding toward us. Every nation, every class must pay its fair share according to the long tally of what it has consumed and what it has destroyed. Perhaps we must let the powerhouse of cards fall and build a real democracy. This is what time it is. It is time to see that nothing else can be addressed in isolation from the climate, Earth's umbilical cord still tethered to our fetal species. If we do these things, we might just have a chance for an Earth made fair and all her creatures one. Wheels within wheels like a gyroscope. But what about hope? How to keep going in the face of ecological Armageddon? Pay closer attention. There are marvels everywhere. The lizard laying eggs in my backyard reminds me how inventive and surprising nature is. The fossils on my altar say, it has all changed before, and still there is beauty. The fear and grief in my heart tell me how deep is my love for all life. Yes, my life too. The way my child burrows into my body for a snuggle reminds me that our love is a moment-by-moment miracle, that human life has always turned on affection. Miracles abound at every node along the interconnected web, including ours. If we can design a self-driving car, why not a self-correcting society? This system of which we are a part is powerful. It can resurge, recreate in time. It is not for us to know whether Noah's Ark or Phoenix Rising provides the paradigm. Let us take the next step, and the next, and the next. Even if you and I don't make it on the boat among the 2x2s, some will. Let their surviving, nay, their thriving, keep us moving forward, never turning back. Whether or not we save the planet, by seeking a new way, we may save our own souls. For we are a part of the whole that we seek to heal. Does it make your heart ache? Use that energy for action. We don't need guilt. We need gumption. We don't need to hide in our separate cells, but to come together as a species who remember what is precious. Take up the dance of the Earth tribe. Let the rest of the strange dream of separation slip away as the Earth alarm wakes us up. It is time to stop snoozing and start choosing a new life. A few nights ago, I took my 7-year-old to see the premiere of a musical called Earth and Soul. It's an original production by the group Kids Who Care here in Fort Worth. The child performers chose the topic of care for the environment, and many of their experiences and feelings were incorporated into the dancing, the music, the dialogue. Very cool. I had been re-immersing myself in material from a class I took last spring on climate justice and theology. And I noticed that even before the performance started, my own emotional field was heightened. I was teary and protective. I wondered how children would tackle this huge, hard topic. The production started where we all should, with wonder. A beautiful set with a backdrop of a field of stars and gently shooting stars cascading downward at an angle as wondrous music began. Young dancers hopped onto a huge circular set piece in the center of the stage, painted like the earth. Their bodies flowed over and around the earth, moving in tune with the music and the marvel of it all. It was an immersive experience of being part of the beauty of the earth, the splendor of the skies. I snuggled into my daughter in the seat next to me, feeling her bright joy, wondering, do these children really understand our present predicament? When will my baby really understand? Will I have to be the one to tell her? Would I want her to hear it from someone else? Mentally, I added this to my list of parental talks. Somehow the sex talk and even the race talk felt less daunting than the climate change talk. I wondered if this production, Earth and Soul, would get across the basics of our conundrum and be the starting point for my first deep conversation with my child. All those children's bodies on the stage communicated joy and resilience in scene after scene. They formed living sculptures of trees swaying in the breeze, of a pump on a fracking site gradually stopping its mechanical motion, of bees pollinating all the plants we eat. Two of the adults who had worked with the kids also offered short performance pieces. A man with a Spanish accent delivered 15 points, framed by the observation that he was taught to love and respect his mother, and that carries over to Mother Earth. He confessed that he hears all this talk about carbon emissions, carbon offsets, carbon budget, and so on, and he doesn't really connect with it. But if it's important for Mother Earth, he's going to pay attention and participate. Now, just in case he's not the only one, in case anyone here hasn't quite retained precisely why climate change is happening, I'll give you my elevator speech, okay? Carbon was stored on the Earth over a period of 100 million years in the form of things like coal and oil and gas. It has been released over a couple of centuries. Got that? 100 million years of going into storage versus 200 years, the lifespan of a saguaro cactus, a single cactus, being released. This released carbon is accumulating in the atmosphere and oceans. And at the same time, some of the Earth's capacity to absorb carbon has been undercut through deforestation. There aren't enough trees to soak it up. This is what has led to the greenhouse effect. The globe overall has gotten warmer and warmer because of the carbon that was released from storage and trapped. Before industrialization, the planet's ability to absorb carbon was ahead of emissions. But now, we have made the bathtub overflow, adding more carbon dioxide while reducing the planet's ability to absorb it or drain it off. All of Earth's systems are affected. And the way climate change plays out in temperature changes, drought, floods, human conflict over resources, famine, and natural disasters, and mass migration, this varies at different points on the globe, though we are certainly seeing it already. Here's the compelling question about it. What time is it in this process of climate change? Where are we in the history of the Earth? It's so late that the geologists have begun using a new name for this age. As reported in The Guardian last year, quote, the current epoch, the Holocene, is the 12,000 years of stable climate since the last ice age, during which all human civilization developed. But the striking acceleration since the mid-20th century of carbon dioxide emissions and sea level rise, the global mass extinction of species, and the transformation of land by deforestation and development, these mark the end of that slice of geological time. The Earth is so profoundly changed that the Holocene must give way to the Anthropocene, end quote. Exactly when the New Age began and what to call it is a matter of some debate, but the Industrial Revolution and colonialism are closely tied to it. We crossed a particularly significant threshold just this last year. Carbon dioxide in the air reached 400 parts per million, You may have heard the number 350 before. Climatologists had set 350 parts per million as the upper limit we could reach before causing global warming to exceed 2 degrees Celsius with dire consequences following. We are now significantly past that. And with feedback loops in the Earth's systems now amplifying the release of carbon, the change is understood to be not only global, but permanent. We will never go back to the conditions that humankind knew before. We have passed the tipping point. Climate change and disruption of ecosystems is here to stay. The questions now are just how quickly will it change? And whether we will do the things that we can do to limit even greater carbon release and environmental disruption. Will our children and our children's children be prepared to face the coming crises? How many species can we save? As societies and people who have contributed the least to the making of this mess remain most vulnerable to the ravages of climate change, how much justice can we bring to the human equation? These are hard questions, a hard reality to face. I put off this sermon for quite a while. The heart freezes in shock and fear. The mind recoils from these unwelcome facts. We don't want it to be true. In fact, I forgot I had already shared this sobering news with you in my science sermon in January. And maybe you, too, find this fact getting fuzzy and fading in your brain after a while. But it will not serve our children to keep forgetting. I do believe there is a powerful place for grief. If we can face the reality, if we can step away from all our screens that mesmerize and anesthetize us, we will feel the pain of what is being lost. The sorrow of dozens of species going extinct with each passing day, of landscapes laid waste. That pain is our connection to all of life. And if we allow ourselves to move through shock and numbness, to cry and mourn and rage, then we can also move forward, motivated to do what can be done, knowing that every day counts. Every day counts. This is why many people who have grappled with our situation are choosing the route of blockades and other acts of civil disobedience, delaying business as usual on pipelines and other projects that will continue the flow of carbon to slow the damage to the earth and its beings. One such activist who works with the UU Young Adults for Climate Justice and now serves as program coordinator for the UU Ministry of the Earth as well is Allie Tharp. Allie paid a virtual visit to the class I attended on climate justice and theology. And she has spoken here at Westside. She shared that she actually became a UU here too, coming with her grandmother, Julaine. The welcome bread that this congregation gave her and the important connection that she made with our youth are strong in her memory. She told our seminary class that the culture of youth empowerment at UU Youth Cons and programs was transformative in her life. It taught her the value of self-determination, empowerment, and responsibility. These are the values that she brings into activism. In fact, Allie said it was Unitarian Universalism, along with the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline right here in Texas, that got her into activism. Before and during college, she shared, she had wanted to actually get out of Texas, but she got involved in a blockade of the pipeline in Nacogdoches. Am I saying that correctly, Bill? All right, Bill's hometown. She witnessed the deep love that others had for this land, and its beauty and sacredness began to seep into her and solidify her commitment to the place. Allie has dedicated her life to saving the planet. So I asked her what motivates her. And she spoke about the potential for mass extinction, how dramatically species extinction has accelerated recently. How the actions that we take now to slow habitat loss and stem biological decline can make the difference between whether 75% biodiversity loss occurs in the next 200 years or whether it is extended over a longer time frame of 10,000 years, allowing for adaptation. Every action now, Ellie said, will influence the diversity of life for thousands of years. It is a time when every choice counts. The pull of denial is strong in the face of this tragic reality, but I don't think we are entirely in denial in our culture. At some level, we understand we face an existential crisis as well as an ecological one. The writer Margot Adler spoke to this in one of her last projects of her life. She explored the role of vampires and other morbid figures in popular culture. Margot put forth a compelling thesis about the increasing popularity of vampires and zombies and such. But there is a connection between this dark vision in pop culture and the reality of our insatiable economic system, including the voracious appetite of fossil fuel companies for profit at any planetary cost. The vampire is a symbol of our own destructiveness, sucking the black blood out of the veins of the earth. Deep down, we know. Our youth and young adults may be more viscerally aware of this connection than some of us with gray on our heads. The price to be paid for the short-sightedness of our way of life falls more heavily on each succeeding generation. And many of us in the developed world may feel shielded from the immediate impacts of climate change. In our daily lives, we can still pretty much pretend that all is well, aside from alarming news that pokes in occasionally, like the iceberg the size of Delaware that fell off the Atlantic ice shelf this month. In some ways, though, we are more closely connected to the catastrophe than other peoples who were already suffering more. After all, it is the logic of capitalism which colonizes people and land and our very minds in pursuit of profit, extracting labor and fossil fuels, trees and species, always needing to take more energy from the system than it returns to it. That logic of the market, a hallmark of our society, a culture we have exported around the world, that is what has brought us to this new age. If, as Joanna Macy coaches, the hero's adventure is the way to approach this daunting moment, what then are our special powers? The corrupting logic of the market can only be stopped by a different kind of force, the force of love and connection. The cycles of natural health and fertility, as Wendell Berry reminds us, the poet farmer, turns on affection across generations, on a rootedness to place that makes you care about it in a much longer-term way than quarterly profit margins. In the Earth and Soul musical that I watched with my daughter recently, I was captivated by a song called Universal Mind. The young singers expressed how someday everyone will perceive the interconnectedness of the web of life. It will be so intuitive and common sense that we must live in a way that honors the earth, all people, all life. I believe everyone is born with this instinct for affinity with our environment. We can be socialized in a way that makes us forget it, that cuts us off from the wider set of connections. But many young people today see through the hollowness of the dominant way of life. They want a more meaningful way. The Earth and Soul musical started with a sense of wonder. Where did it end? With a chorus of kids singing, "It's in our hands. It's in our hands." Yes, it matters what we do right now in this pivotal time. Can we turn breakdown into breakthrough? We Unitarian Universalists have honed some helpful skills, as it turns out, distinguishing between the transient and the permanent in Christianity, discerning what is life-giving and what is not in the religious tradition we inherited, sifting the gold from the dross. Can we help to do that more broadly with the culture of Western civilization? Yes, we can. That's what we've been doing. We can create new kinds of institutions, new ways of meeting human needs that are more benign. It starts with decolonizing our minds from the logic of capital, our own minds. As Wendell Berry says, abandoning the homeopathic delusion that the damage done by industrialization can be solved by industrialization. And instead, as Berry urges, learning the sources and costs of our own economic lies. Creating locally adapted economies based on local conditions. One of the encouraging trends globally that gives me hope and energizes me is a move back towards treating basic resources as commons, shared and preserved by those who depend on them. The market commodifies, but we can commonize. Such effort is just as radical as participating in blockades. It is going to the root of the problem. But I recognize the courage and wisdom in stopping more fossil fuels from coming out of the ground, from letting the coming climate catastrophe get even worse. And as it turns out, Texas figures into this in a big way. Journalist Wynne Stevenson interviewed dozens of activists for his book, What We're Fighting For Now Is Each Other. One of them, Ron Seifert, explains, if the climate movement is ever going to win in a really robust way, it's going to come to Texas, the belly of the beast. Houston and the Texas Gulf, that's the lion's den, the largest petrochemical complex in the world. Now, there are plenty of fossil fuel connections here in North Texas, too. Last November, a group of us from Westside took one small step when we joined a protest in Dallas outside the headquarters of Energy Transfer Partners. That's the company behind the Dakota Access pipeline near the Standing Rock Reservation. Among those who were speaking at the protest was a local organizer for the Society of Native Nations. And here's what I find myself wondering when I ponder what to do here in this place and this time. How might Westside amplify what Native people in Texas are doing? How might we support what other people in the Metroplex, those most affected immediately by the fossil fuel industry, are trying to do? When we do act, however we act, it must be rooted in love and connection, like the love that Steve and his family have for that unique saguaro cactus, in all the ways it is sacred and adapted to its environment. So many of the activists that Wynne Stevenson talked to spoke of this connectedness that grounded and sustained their activism. Have any of you heard of Grace Ann Cagle? She is a third-generation daughter of Fort Worth. And Stevenson writes that Grace, or Luna, as she was known in the East Texas Cross Timbers, where she risked her life, got involved in the tar sands blockade near Winnsboro. Spending time in this endangered habitat, Luna, who described herself as strictly atheist, developed, quote, just this overwhelming sense of place that I wanted to defend. These woods in East Texas are sacred for me, she said. Stevenson wanted to know how she stayed in the struggle. If it weren't for the connection I feel to the earth, I would quit. The whole reason I'm doing this is the continuation of life. I wish, Luna said, there was no fossil fuel industry, and I could just live on a farm and have a bunch of babies. But that's not how it is, and I can't give up. Now, I don't know about y'all. Most of you have been here a lot longer than me. But when I go walking among the great trees here in Tarrant County, I melt into them. I may as well be a druid. When I turn face up to the Texas sky, I feel myself open to eternity. When I look at a field of wildflowers, I feel a surge of hope. And when I behold my child, well, there are not enough hugs and kisses in the world. I do not fall for the illusion that my power is limited to my 4 limbs and my hominid brain. My power beats in the strength of my heart, a muscle that never rests. It comes from my soul, which is boundless as the sky. I don't have a precise path laid out. I'm not sure exactly what to do next and next and next, but I'm with Luna. I can't give in to cynicism or despair. I can't give up. For me, the best way to rebel against the whole machine is to work with active hope toward an alternative reality, another vision. To go on believing in the worth of people and live from my bone knowledge that I am not separate from the trees. To care about the future of my child and your child so much that I would take risks in my own life on the chance of making it better for them. Just a chance is enough, rather than spiral into despair and complacency. If not us, who? If not now, when? We are the ones staring down the barrel of climate change. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the children of the Earth tribe, all of us. It is time to rise up and defend our one and only Blue Boat home. Can I get an amen? Amen. Please rise in body or spirit for our